On August 24, 2011, a father walks through his front door carrying ice cream for his kids. He sets it down on the kitchen counter, completely unaware of the intruder behind him. 2 gunshots rip through the room. The sound echoes as the father collapses onto the kitchen floor. The ice cream continues to melt away. His kids never got to taste it. As for 34-year-old Mark Despain, it was his last moment alive. He never saw the face that shot him. But this was no burglary. The person who arranged his murder wasn't a stranger at all. It was someone he just had lunch with, someone who shared his bed. This is a story of how a family destroyed itself from the inside out because of ambition and financial pressures. Welcome to Creepy True Cases. Take a second to subscribe and turn on notifications. Now back to the story. Mark Evan Despain was born in Jonesboro, Arkansas in 1977. He graduated from high school in 1995 and grew up a devout Christian as well as a family-oriented man. He met his wife, Michelle Kelly, when they were teenagers. Michelle was a year younger than Mark, and she already had a little daughter named Brooke from a previous relationship. This did not stop the two from getting together. One thing led to another, and Michelle became pregnant for Mark. Both families came together to decide what was best, and the result? Mark had to marry Michelle. At that time, Mark was 19 and Michelle was 18. Their marriage was more of an obligation than of true love, as both were too young and naive to know what they were getting into. Mark didn't act as if he was being forced into anything. He took responsibility for his actions and even took care of Brooke as if she were his daughter. Mark and Michelle later had 2 more kids, Zach and Blake. Mark took up a career in real estate, the same business his parents, Jack and Tana Despain, were in. He slowly built a trustworthy property appraisal and investment company, using his home address, 4320 Jenny Lane, as the office. Michelle started working at a local bank, but later pivoted to handling bookkeeping for the family business. Ultimately, she was in charge of finances. She controlled what came in and what went out. The family seemed happy from the outside view. They were a perfect traditional family. That was until Michelle's father, Carl Kelly, came into the picture. Carl saw how successful his daughter and son-in-law had become with their business and decided that he wanted to be a part of it. He found a way to fix himself into the family's real estate business. He chose one of the most critical responsibilities in the business, which included collecting rent from tenants, managing rental properties, and managing day-to-day logistics. He soon became more influential and financially well-off than he had ever been. But Carl wasn't happy. Something disturbed him greatly. Mark was still his boss and would give him instructions to carry out, just the same as an employer would to an employee, but Carl was unhappy with this. His ego as the father-in-law to a much younger man caused resentment, and over the years, it grew into hatred. However, there was another problem, one that resided within the Despain family. Mark formerly worked with his parents, Jack and Tana, before disagreements over money and hierarchy emerged. The constant disputes were unsettling. In the midst of it all, Michelle also had heated quarrels with Jack Despain. Things spiraled when Michelle accused Jack of taking inappropriate photos of her daughter, Brooke, with his phone. This allegation shattered the family as Mark was forced to side with his wife, Michelle, against his dad, Jack. Mark made one of the most difficult decisions of his life. He involved the police in the matter to investigate his own father. After a few days, investigations showed that the pictures were, in fact, taken by Brooke herself while using Grandpa's phone without permission. The truth came late as the greater damage was done. Mark had disconnected from his father, and Tana had left Jack temporarily after hearing what happened. Jack Despain hated his in-laws for destroying his family with lies. Most of all, he hated Carl Kelly, Michelle's father. Mark had lost his parents and was now completely under the influence of his wife and her family. This may have been a deliberate plan all along, because what happened next certainly shows why Michelle and her family needed to isolate Mark. While the business seemed to be doing well, unbeknownst to Mark, the business was over $2 million in debt. There were unpaid debts, bills, and mail of foreclosure. Who was behind it all? No other than Michelle. She handled the finances and was actually responsible for this huge financial downfall. Their roles were clear. Mark handled the clientele, bringing in new business investments, while Michelle managed finances, but Michelle had a shocking secret, one that reeked of betrayal and infidelity. Michelle was having an affair with a 24-year-old employee, a man 10 years younger than she was. She wasn't only giving herself to this employee, but she was paying his bills as well. She gave him everything he wanted, all for physical pleasures. Michelle moved significant amounts of money from the family business each time to make her lover happy. It wasn't a one-time mistake, it was a conscious decision made by a woman who now prioritized the comfort of her lover over the success of the family business as well as the family's future. A week before Mark's murder, he noticed something was off with their finances and decided to confront Michelle about it. The conversation all led to deep-rooted problems concerning their relationship. He even mentioned that he was considering divorcing her. This statement triggered something in her. It dawned on Michelle that a divorce would leave her with very little to take care of herself. Her life of luxury would disappear overnight, and her affair would be exposed through her numerous bank transfers. Most importantly, a divorce would mean losing out on a massive life insurance payout. Michelle discussed with her father, Carl, and together they came up with a plan. Mark had to die. Carl contacted one of their tenants named Johnny Hubbard, who had deep ties to contract killers, and Hubbard introduced him to Terrence Odell Barker, known infamously as Qualo. They settled at $7,000 to $10,000 for Mark's life. It was supposed to look like a burglary, however, no plan is ever perfect. That fateful morning, the 24th of August 2011, Michelle texted Carl, saying that it had to be done today. Carl told her to get him out to lunch. She agreed. This simple conversation became the biggest evidence in the murder case. Mark followed his wife, Michelle, to lunch, completely unaware that an assassin was waiting for him in the house. After lunch, Michelle came up with an excuse to go to a separate location first and then meet up with Mark later at home. Mark drove home alone that afternoon and even stopped along the way to buy ice cream for his kids before heading home directly. As Mark walked into the kitchen, he noticed that certain things were out of place. The house had been made to look like it had been burgled. Mark set down the ice cream on the counter to check on other parts of the house. He didn't see the dark figure hiding behind the door. The killer shot Mark twice at close range. Mark's body lay lifeless on the floor with no one to call for help. When Michelle got home, she found her husband's body on the floor and dialed 911. In no time, investigators arrived at the residence. They immediately noticed that the house appeared to be ransacked. Drawers were open, properties were scattered and out of place. It was almost convincing, but something else was wrong. Investigators noticed that valuables were still in place. Cash was left in drawers, valuable items were left standing, and jewelry remained untouched. This seemed like either a failed burglary or a targeted execution. Besides the inconsistencies, Michelle's reaction to the robbery and death of her husband wasn't very convincing. Her emotions were inauthentic. Things got even worse when Jack Despain and Carl Kelly faced off just outside the house. The two patriarchs were informed about the murder, and when they met at the scene, it was a showdown of angry words that revealed that there might be a reason for someone to arrange the murder. They exchanged accusations and profanities, exposing mutual disdain that had simmered for years. Carl told investigators that Jack must have murdered his son, while Jack persuaded investigators to look into the lives of Carl and Michelle. The truth quickly came to light, but in a most unsuspecting way. Terrence Barker, the actual killer, had been out, bragging about his latest assignment in the streets. But his words got to the ears of Detective Brooks, who had listeners everywhere. Johnny Hubbard's blue Mercedes was also spotted on the crime scene earlier in the day. But the evidence that was most crucial was the earlier texts between Michelle and Carl. Their text records told the story in clear words. Even deleted messages were recovered by specialists, and their content shocked investigators. Michelle, Carl, Hubbard, and Terrence were indicted for the murder. Terrence Barker was arrested for first-degree murder and ended up receiving 35 years in prison. Johnny Hubbard pleaded guilty and received an adequate sentence plus probation revocation. Carl Kelly received 35 years for first-degree murder but later died of congestive heart failure in his prison cell. Michelle, after deliberations with Mark's family, got a reduced sentence of 30 years, with the possibility of parole in 5 years. However, in September 2019 she was paroled and disappeared from public view. She later sought insurance payment for Mark's death, which became a critical matter in civil litigation. The ones who lost the most were the kids left behind, Zach, Blake, and Brooke. Their lives were forever scarred by the family's dysfunction. Mark fell victim to those he trusted and loved the most. He was isolated from his family, and when he dared to question his wife on their finances and the issues in their relationship, she arranged for his assassination. Not just to silence him but also to profit from his demise. Yet, according to records, she ended up spending less than 5 years in prison. What are your thoughts on this case? Let us know in the comments. Be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching.